Hello, Pod Smashers, and welcome to the first 2021 episode of
80-bit Pod Smash, 80-bit Pod Smash,
where gaming goes to grab a beer.
We're your hosts, Penguin and Termite. I am Penguin.
I am Termite, and we are a weekly video game podcast smashing together ideas that you care about with video games.
That's right.
Small correction. This is actually the second 2021 episode because we did our New Year's one, but this is our first actual topical episode in the year.
Yeah, for sure.
Here we are.
And as a slight correction and addendum, because we record these in advance, and it is still, by the time we are recording this, it is still not New Year's yet for us.
Nobody cares.
Nope, you have to accept this.
Nope.
There's a slight correction. Last week's episode, Termite pulled
it's
the
fine.
data.
Guys, just skip ahead like 15 seconds.
Termite
Spoiler
pulled the
alert.
data and got, now they're even more curious. What could Termite be trying to hide right now? Termite pulled the data and revealed that we had both earned 16 trophies for the year
Platinum
2020.
trophies.
Platinum trophies. Yeah, sorry. 16 platinum trophies for the year 2020. But that number must be corrected for as of, and I'll just date us right now, December 28th. Penguin will, by the end of this evening, unless something catastrophic happens in the next, 2 hours, will have platinumed Cyberpunk 2077 for his 17th platinum for the year 2020.
Yay! Competitions aside, platinum trophies are awesome, and everyone who gets them deserves to be celebrated because they're a pain in the butt, especially this one.
Oh my gosh.
And with that, don't even count your chickens before they hatch because this could totally crash your entire game save, and you might have to play the entire game over to get this one trophy. It seems like it's going to work, but who knows? It doesn't pop. It's the worst grindy one. It's the one you have to get a level 20 skill. If you played Cyberpunk at all, you know what we're talking about. And it takes forever. You played through the entire game. You've done all the extra stuff.
My recommendation would be to just pick one method of killing people. And other than the trophy that, there's one trophy to kill 100 people with melee and one trophy to kill 300 people with range. So pick a gun type that you like or a sword. And then just, other than that other trophy, just kill everyone in the game until you get the 20 skill points in that skill because it's grindy as crap. But
if you hit that level 20 and that trophy doesn't pop, I'm gonna be so angry for you.
I'm just gonna contact Sony. I mean, I could contact Sony and send them screenshots or whatever. I don't know how it works, but there's got to be a way to send them proof that I've achieved. But this buggy butt game won't pop the trophy for me. I have read that this trophy can be bugged out for people, which terrifies
are you serious?
Me. Yeah, it terrifies me.
Oh my gosh, I was being facetious. Yes, what are we drinking?
Enough about Cyberpunk 2077. We are a weekly video game podcast discussing ideas you care about with video games. Tonight we are going to, for our first proper episode of 2020, we're going to kick the year off with one of our series, putting the soul in console. And last year we did all of the Sega consoles. So we're going to start off this year with the Microsoft consoles. We're going to go to the green side of the pond, a little bit out of our comfort zone, and talk about the original Xbox tonight. So
we talk a lot about Nintendo and Sony in general, and so I feel like we did a lot of Sega stuff in the beginning, and now we're going to switch to Xbox and Microsoft side of the camp to kind of add the diversity to our conversations because that's not the primary platforms we play on.
Exactly. Yep. And so that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. And as you hinted at, we're gaming goes grab a beer, so we like to talk about what we're drinking tonight as well. So what are you drinking for our episode tonight?
I saved a good beer for tonight, being that it is now officially 2021. And I had a good beer last week too, but this one is the Goose Island Bourbon County brand stout that comes out every Black Friday.
Oh my, yes.
This is the 2020 version. And I actually found it on the shelf at Giant. So usually in years past, I had to line up in advance to get one on Black Friday morning, get up and get out of the house and go stand in the cold and wait in line and Total Wine. But tonight, or this year, I just saw one. I had no intention, no plans to actually try to get one. Life is crazy. There's COVID. I have 2 little kids. Christmas, nuts, right? So I was just going to put it off this year and be like, you know what? It's not going anywhere. I'll just go back 2021 when life is maybe a little easier. But I saw one in Giant when I was just randomly shopping. So I was like, well, I guess I'll get one. Blink. So here I have it. It is a stout aged in bourbon barrels. It is the quintessential legendary bourbon barrel aged stout. Again, coming from Goose Island Beer Company out of Illinois, Chicago specifically. It is, reading the bottle here, intense aromas of charred oak, vanilla, caramel, and smoke. And you can age these up to 5 years. I have done that in the past. I have drank what we call verticals, where you line up 5 years worth of them, collected across different friends. It is amazing. I highly recommend, if you are into beer or bourbon barrel stouts at all, that this is a great starter for someone who's looking for a beer. You might not be able to find it by the time this episode goes live, though, because it's kind of done. But Black Friday of 2021, be on the lookout.
Nice. I am drinking another beer from Hardywood. I am drinking I don't know if I have had one. I think I talked about the beer from Hardywood that I was going to drink, but I didn't actually have one on the podcast. A good friend of the show, friend of ours, Ryan, we had him on the show to talk about caffeine and junk food, and it was a blast. He came and stopped by at my house on Christmas Eve and delivered me a Christmas morning, Hardywood's Christmas morning. I would have drank it on Christmas morning had I not already had a bottle of the Kentucky Christmas morning, which is what I talked about last week that I was going to drink. So I was like, this is great. I will save it for the podcast and talk about how you delivered it to me there. So yeah, this is just a regular Christmas morning. The only difference is that it doesn't have like the coffee flavor, I think.
Nope. It is a gingerbread stout conditioned with coffee. It's not bourbon barrel aged. The Kentucky one is bourbon barrel aged.
The Kentucky one's bourbon barrel aged. So I will read the thing. It says, Hardywood Christmas Morning, Imperial Milk Stout with ginger, cinnamon, honey, vanilla, and coffee. You're right. It does have the coffee. Hardywood Christmas Morning lends a cheerful decadence to our gingerbread stout through deep conditioning on locally roasted Mexican Chiapas coffee beans. Skip the leftover cookies and milk and awaken your senses with this delightful holiday tradition. Although, to be fair, I have been eating a lot of Christmas cookies, so I won't skip the cookies, but I'll skip the milk and just drink the Christmas morning. So, that is what I am drinking. It's great. I love gingerbread stout. It makes me think of Christmas every time. Not my favorite stout in the world, but it's a good one. So,
it's so funny and perfect that Ryan, manager of a coffee company, happened to drop off a coffee conditioned gingerbread stout.
Yeah, he's hooking me up.
It's perfect. Yeah, I love
good.
it.
This is awesome. I think I like this better than the Kentucky. Now that I'm having it after having the Kentucky recently.
Yeah,
I think this just tastes more like. It has more of the coffee flavor because it's not getting counteracted with the boozy flavor. It just tastes like I feel like I'm drinking a coffee right now, like a really sweet coffee.
Yeah,
like a cold, like a cold coffee, cold brew or something like that. It's really good. So I had for the last little bit of things to banter before we get into our segments or anything like that. It did somewhat snow a little bit. We did get kind of a white Christmas in our area. However, you live 20 minutes north of me, and you guys got it really good on Christmas. You guys had it snowing for half the day, and it was even starting to stick a little bit. And I was super jealous. I was so salty. I even posted on Facebook about how salty I was because while you guys were getting snow, it was sunny where I was, at my side of the world. I was like, are you freaking kidding me? This is ridiculous. And then I had been making my crab dip. I had just cracked open my Kentucky Christmas morning to be drinking that while eating the crab dip. And I went to go say something to my mother-in-law, and she's sitting at the window, and I look, and behind her, it's the flurries. And I go, I had just had enough to be a little bit tipsy, and I point at the window, and I go, Christmas miracle. She
and then you proceeded to Marco Polo me.
I did.
You ran outside like Buddy the Elf going, with your phone up.
Miracle.
Yeah, it was pretty entertaining.
It was pretty funny. So it literally snowed for maybe an hour. We were watching Christmas Story. I was eating my crab dip. I was drinking my I was getting real drunk off of a whole bottle to myself of Kentucky Christmas morning. I was feeling really good. And then by the time my son woke up at 2:00, it was already done. But whatever, I'll take what I can get. Beggars can't be choosers when it comes to Christmas miracles.
That's true.
All right. Did you have anything to add about the snow or anything like that?
No, it's just we had all the windows open and we loved it. Now all the kids loved it, and we just watched it snow all day. My wife spent the day in the kitchen cooking an amazing Thanksgiving-esque turkey meal, but for Christmas. So the house smelled incredible. Nice. I was drinking various beers throughout the day as well, and it was playing with kids, putting together toys, and doing fun things. It added to the magic of the day. It was awesome.
Nice. All right. Well, Christmas is one of our favorite things, just period. But
doing this podcast is our favorite thing.
doing this podcast is our favorite thing.
Favorite things.
Favorite
a fun
thing.
little segment, a little
It is.
bitty, a little extra bit of our game podcast that highlights something cool that we dug this week. That's the past tense of we're digging this week. And it can be super shallow as a thing or meaningful as an emotional attachment to a family member. Is that a better example? Is that because you keep correcting me every time I describe it? You're like, you need to come up with something different.
No, I don't.
Did I nail
say
it?
That? Do I say that?
Crushed it.
We're hoping that you are inspired to go out and find your next favorite thing. Anyways, so yeah, I guess I can start. And mine's again, we just had Christmas this past weekend, so I don't know about you, but mine's going to be a Christmas gift that I got finally. I've experienced them. I've enjoyed them when I've had them, but finally my father-in-law got me for my own home, my very own bidet. So
yes. Oh my gosh.
Now, hearkening back all the way to our very first episode where we had an argument on the podcast about like how the correct way to wipe yourself. We were wrong. 173 episodes later, I can say officially on the podcast, we were both wrong. The correct way to wipe yourself is to spring for a bidet and have the angels, the finger of God, wipe your butt. That is the correct way. So that is my favorite thing. I now have one in my home.
So
I'm going to be
here's
so
a follow-up
clean.
question.
Sure.
Do you wipe after the bidet?
Yeah, you gotta dry it up a little bit.
So you just do it to dry, like you just dab it.
Well, you dry it. There's always a little bit of debris that got loosened up but not fully removed from the stream.
See, that's okay. So like, poop and water don't really mix, and the bidet doesn't really do it. Like it just wets it down. So I still find myself like wiping just as much as I would anyway. But now I'm wet, and it's kind of a bigger mess. And I'm like, I don't understand.
It's the pressure, man. The pressure is what blasts it. It blasts it off.
Maybe I just need to eat more fiber.
I don't wipe nearly as much when I literally take one
That's what
swipe,
they say.
and that's all I need. That's all I need after the bidet. So,
or maybe I'm just a clean freak.
Maybe. Anyways, bidet. Get one. Get one. You'll do yourself a favor. Everyone needs to get one. We need to shake off this obsession with toilet paper as a country and as a nation, and just like this is one of those things we should all just move on from after the pandemic. Is like
that'd be great. I would love that.
Just get a bidet.
I can get behind that.
Everyone's butts and will be cleaner. The hemorrhoid cream business will plummet significantly, and I think we'll all be happier as a result.
We will.
What's your favorite thing?
My favorite thing is I am living my 90s life right now. And I didn't really expect to. Again, it's all Christmas related because of the gifts that I received and the things I find myself doing. T-Bone, friend of the show, and in our Discord server and in every one of our Twitch chats. He's very loyal. He's there all the time. It's awesome. I love having T-Bone around. He gifted me a copy of Dragon Ball Z Kakarot for PS4, as well as Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, the remakes, also for PS4. So I found myself putting in a Dragon Ball Z title and on Christmas Day, installing it, and I started playing it that day. Dragon Ball Z and Christmas Day have run deep in our family, and I didn't realize it until this year. When I was living at home before I got married, that was during the years the Budokai series were like annualized. So Dragon Ball Z Budokai 1, 2, and 3, and then the Tenkaichi series, there was 3 of those. So like over 6 years, there was an annual Dragon Ball Z video game that was actually good that we would gift each other in some way every single year. And I was living at home, so of course we'd play it together. And so Dragon Ball Z has been a Christmas Day thing, and it totally took the back burner to my memory. I never equated it to Christmas until I started playing Dragon Ball Z Kakarot on Christmas Day. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got super nostalgic, and I was loving every minute I was playing of this game. But then Tony Hawk Pro Skater, like that's also the 90s. And I continue living that dream and that fantasy. It's awesome. I love skateboarding. That's what got me into skateboarding. And so I'm having a blast messing around with that. And then I got motivated to finish Crash Bandicoot 4, which you got for me for Christmas. So Crash Bandicoot, also a 90s thing, even though I'm playing the 4th entry in the series. Yeah. So Crash Bandicoot, Dragon Ball Z, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and then there was, of course, the holiday sale that's going on the PlayStation Network. It's probably over by the time this episode goes live, but Final Fantasy VIII, which I've never actually finished, was on sale for $10, so I picked it up, and that motivated me to start finishing Final Fantasy IX, which has been on my plate for like 2 or 3 years. I talked about it on the show when I first started it up again. And so now I'm playing Final Fantasy IX, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, and Tony Hawk's. I am. And Cyberpunk, of course, is the non-kid friendly game, whereas the kids can kind of be around while I'm rotating through the other three. But it's all from the 90s. And I'm just like, this is amazing. I'm reliving all of my, I don't even know, not even teenager. I was 4 years old in 1990. So, from 4 to 14, my early teen, my preteen years, I'm having a blast. I'm loving it. That's my favorite thing right now. Video games are awesome.
Nice. All right. Well, that is favorite things. We can move on to our next segment, which is
DLC.
DLC stands for downloadable content and is a segment of our show where we have fun with a discussion that you wouldn't normally have around video games. And it's just usually it's a little game, a little bit. Sometimes it's related to our main topic. Sometimes it is not. So tonight it is not, and we are going to do one of our, I don't really have anything prepared. So we are going to do one of our favorite versions of favorite things, DLC, which is one of the origins of DLC, which is blank blanks. Blank blanks, classics.
Solid Snake.
Always our go-to fill-in. No. I'm picking the characters this time. But I will do we will connect it a little bit to the main topic, and I will pick Microsoft exclusive characters that are currently owned in some way, shape, or form by Microsoft. So I will not pick Master Chief because that's the low-hanging fruit there.
It really is low-hanging fruit. Refresh my memory, because I'm a loser, as well as anyone who might be new to our show, as to what a blank blank is.
Yeah, so it was born out of the idea of the age-old conversations that you would have with your friends of who would win in a fight. And though I don't think we actually ever really done that yet, who would win in a fight, but or maybe we did. We did it for like the episode with A-Ray. I think we had who would win in a sword fight or something like that. Mm-hmm. But so it's born out of that, except we take the fight out of it and we say who would win, which of these two video game characters would win in any other kind of contest. And so it's completely improvised. He's going to pick off the top of his head with no preparation a contest, and I'm going to pick two characters. So when you have your contest, let me know, and I will pick two characters.
So my contest, I have to come up with that on my own. And it could be anything. There's no restrictions.
Correct. Yes.
Got it.
But I mean, family friendly. No.
Of course. Yeah.
No, like.
It is winter. We're in the middle of January for you guys listening to our show and gals. So given that it's the middle of winter and I have a lot of fond video game experiences with the Winter Wonderlands, I'm going to say the competition is a snowboarding race.
Okay, snowboarding race.
But you can't use anyone from the SSX or the Amped snowboarding series.
I've already picked the characters separately from that. Yeah.
All right. That would be really silly if you picked like 1080 snowboarding something. Like I just mentioned a whole bunch of snowboarding games, but no games directly related to snowboarding can be involved. But who would win in a snowboarding race? And now your characters.
All right. So the two characters that I chose were Banjo and Kazooie as sort of a single unit, and then I had picked Joanna Dark.
Okay.
So who do we win, Joanna Dark or Banjo and Kazooie? I feel like this is a really close one because they're both incredibly competent characters, which would come down. It almost would come down to now who would win in a fight because they'd have to be trying to sabotage each other going down this hill. But we'll stick it with not snowboarding, sledding, right? Do you say sledding or snowboarding?
Snowboarding.
Okay, so there is a certain level of finesse there. In which case, my immediate thought is Joanna Dark has the upper hand because she is a secret agent. She is an action hero, basically. So she would have probably the innate. She's probably already trained in snowboarding, so she's probably more skilled.
But Kazooie will help Banjo balance and fly.
Yeah.
He'll never fall, and any obstacle would stop him.
Cartoony character, all that kind of slapsticky humor. Like he's super coordinated as well. I'm with you on that one. This is tough. This might be a tie. Do you think that Banjo would at any point have to use Kazooie as a snowboard?
That would be hilarious. And Kazooie would have a whole bunch of snow in his face. Is it he or she? I don't even know.
I think Kazooie's a she.
So she would be eating snow in her nose and face. Yeah. And so I don't think that would work very well. So he would have his own snowboard, but Kazooie would be the balance, jumping, flying, floating, obstacle dodging person, in that couple, so that Banjo basically just has to point the board in the right direction and go. Joanna would have to use tech maybe some grenades to blow up obstacles, or like some, proximity mines to stop Banjo, so it becomes a fight kind of thing. But the actual ability to snowboard. Go ahead.
This is my take. Banjo at some point loses his snowboard and finishes the race with Kazooie. He wins based on, he gets to the bottom of the mountain first and goes across the finish line. However, Joanna gets him on the technicality of he didn't finish with his snowboard. She finishes with her snowboard intact. So, perfect. Yep, that's perfect. You want to say
it's like
it's
a tie,
dark.
like in the race. It's very... it's dark outside, and she's got night vision, and she's used grenades to blow up everything and mines around, and she has perfect abilities, and she finishes like
she prepared this ahead of time. But Banjo's like slapstick,
right?
Like just
bouncing off the rocks,
bumble through to success. Like manages to get in there faster. Probably falls off a cliff at some point, and then lands on Kazooie and snowboards the rest of the way there. He finishes within a breath. Like they're both neck and neck at the last little bit, and then he finishes a breath ahead of her, but then she knocks him on the fact that he didn't finish with the snowboard.
Hilarious. And I love that you picked two Rareware characters, or Rare as we call it, which is now in Microsoft Studio, but it was Nintendo at the time that we're talking about this episode.
Ironic that I realized that in hindsight. I almost did instead of Joanna Dark, I almost did Marcus Phoenix from Gears of War.
Yeah.
I was like waffling because I was like, I can't pick Master Chief, but I could maybe go with the Arbiter or something like that. You know what I mean? Or like the Prophet of Truth or something like that. Yeah. I was like, I could almost go with Halo, but yep. But I realized in hindsight, I was like, oh man, technically I picked two rare characters, both of which I first experienced on Nintendo consoles.
Yep, you sure did.
Good times. All right, well that is DLC for the day. We want to hear from you. We want to know. DLC is an ongoing conversation, should be an ongoing conversation. So we want you to listen to this and then be like, you guys are both wrong. This is how it would go out. And then we want to hear how it would go down. Who would win, Joanna Dark or Banjo and Kazooie? And so Termite will tell you where you pod smashers of the internet can share with us your thoughts on this DLC.
All of our destinations are located at 80bitpodsmash.com. There are links to all of our social media platforms. There's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. There's a subreddit for us and a link to the Discord server that we have that is in all of our show notes, as well as any podcast platform of your choice. There's an RSS feed. There's Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Play. We're all there. Everywhere you need us to be, we're there. Let us know if we're not somewhere you want us to be, and we'll put ourselves there. But you can leave comments on all of our social media platforms and talk to us in Discord.
All right, so that is where you can find us. So we will go ahead and jump into our main topic, which is putting the soul in consoles. One of our series, we've been going through kind of some of the, we're going to go through kind of the major consoles that have been definitive over the last few years, from the major console to decades. Last few decades.
Yeah.
And that have been meaningful to us. But we're going to take each one at a time. We're going to talk about it from kind of both a history, hardware, discussion about the design of the thing. We will, of course, talk about some of the various games and whatnot, and attachments, but we're going to sort of talk about the impact of each console. So if you've been with us for a while, you heard us do this for all the Sega consoles, starting with the Genesis, the Saturn, and the Dreamcast, and now we're doing it with the Microsoft. So we will do the Xbox 360, the awfully named Xbox One, and then maybe at some point we'll do the Series X. Do you think you should finish with the Series X since it's out now? I know, I'm kind of like, we've talked about it a lot already. There's not really, there's not much history that we haven't lived through on this podcast already, but we'll see. See. We'll for certain do the first three generations of Xboxes, and then at some point we may get around to Nintendo and Sony, but Termite said, we really wanted to give some love to, like I said, the other side of the console war that we tend to not side with. But we still love, a lot of love for the Xbox and the Xbox players, a lot of love for Microsoft. And again, our longtime listeners have heard us wax eloquent about our thoughts on Microsoft's business strategy and how they've kind of pulled themselves up from the disaster that was the Xbox One and kind of reasserted themselves as a major game player in the market. But that's all recent history. Let's get in the Wayback Machine and go back to the year 2000-ish. 2001 is when it released, but obviously this thing was in the works long before that. So how did Microsoft decide to get into console development.
Exactly. So here we go. This is Microsoft. It is the second American-made console brand after Atari, whose most recent release was the Atari Jaguar in 96 when it stopped production. I don't know when the Jaguar came out without looking it up, but I know it stopped production in 96. This console, the Microsoft Xbox, was released in November, specifically November 15th, 2001, 3 days before the Nintendo GameCube. So they beat Nintendo to the market by 3 days. And this console was launched at $299, which is equivalent to $439.60 in today's money, given that the Series S is $300 and the Series X is $500. The original Xbox, by today's standards, fits right in the middle of that. So today's economy, looks like Microsoft is still staying in that strategy that they're straddling the $400 to $450 line, which is kind of interesting. That I like looking at the inflation prices of consoles in the past to see how much they would be today if they launched, and this makes sense given what it is. So what is it? How it happened? Okay, Microsoft, an American company, is now making video game consoles for the first time. They're entering themselves into the competition. Sega's gone. The Dreamcast had flopped. And at the point that Microsoft's Xbox had launched, the Dreamcast had already stopped production. But given that consoles take years and years of research and development, R&D, to plan and assess, Sega was still in the mix. So when Microsoft had executed their plan, there was a Sega console, a Dreamcast, a PlayStation console, the PlayStation 2, and a Nintendo console, the Nintendo GameCube, all in the works. And all three players, Microsoft being the fourth, all four players were here to compete. So what did Microsoft bring to the table that was different? Well, their idea was that they should develop its own gaming console back in 1998. There's a couple of folks, we'll name them: Kevin Brackus, Seamus Blackley, Seamus. Ooh,
yeah,
thank you.
That's how you pronounce that name.
Sean. SEA, right.
Yep.
Otto Burks and Ted Haase, performing the software giant's first console team after successfully pitching their idea to Bill Gates.
It's helpful to know they were the team behind, they were the four engineers behind Microsoft's DirectX, which is a graphics application,
API.
like a API. Yeah.
Yep. API is an acronym for I actually don't know what it stands for. I just know what it is. It's like open. It's kind of like open source, but it's an interface that allows you to code something for yourself that interfaces with something already
Application
established.
Programming Interface.
There you go. That's hey, perfect. Exactly what I just described.
You're like, it's like some kind of application that programs interfacing between things.
Yeah. It allows you to make your own code that interfaces with something already established. And so what was already established was the DirectX. That was an API. That was a graphics API at the time for PC gaming. This console was intended to be the first game system built like a PC, using the DirectX API to bring all the flexibility and power of a gaming rig to the console market.
Yep.
So that's kind of a brief history.
They were planning this in 1998, which that date stands out. Was that the Saturn? Was that the N64's release? I feel like that
N64 was 96.
96.
So,
okay.
Saturn.
So So it's again, like you said, kind of when they started this idea, they were starting this in the middle of a very not overcrowded, not nearly like the video game crash of the 80s or anything like that, but certainly was getting pretty crowded in regards to heavy hitters, contenders in this market. So yeah, again, kind of a bold choice, but like you said, there was nobody in the American space. There were no American companies that were making.
I am silly. It was the Sega Dreamcast's release date was the 98.
Was 98. Okay. Yeah.
The Saturn was 94.
94. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Correct.
I knew that date stood out though. We had talked about it with Sega at one point. So cool. I do like this though. This little bit though. The project was codenamed Midway in reference to the Battle of Midway during World War II, in which Japan was decisively defeated by American forces.
Wow, a little American nationalism for you.
As a representation,
holy cow!
It was a representation of Microsoft's desire to surpass Sony in the console market.
Wow, that's hilarious.
This entire thing, we're still having this console war. It's just an extension. This is just how we've decided to hash out our World War II beef, apparently, with Japan.
Oh, that's great. Well, kind of. I mean, maybe that knocks Microsoft down a few notches.
A little bit nationalistic, I agree. A little bit American exceptionalism.
A little petty. A reminder and caveat, the video game industry is all about making money and capitalism. So the fact that Microsoft did this was because they saw a market that they could leverage to make money. That's all this is about. Yes, it's cheeky and funny to think about like Midway and competing against Japan. The PlayStation 2 is still the single most sold video game console of all time. So Xbox or Microsoft trying to think that they could make a console to compete against that is hilarious. And it did not work out for them because they did not surpass the sales of Sony. But it did work out for them because it did make an entire ecosystem of games. And we'll get into why or what they did to be unique and to stand out with this idea of being a gaming PC, but kind of bundled into a console. So the Xbox was first shown off with Bill Gates and The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, hilariously enough. Yeah, you go YouTube that video. It's awesome. They revealed the final design of the Xbox in 2001 at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, along with the system's official release date of being November 15th. To a lot of hype and fanfare and like awesomeness and like, great, this is fantastic and yay. Mm-hmm. So, that's kind of the history in a nutshell. I'm not taking up the entire episode's content of the history of the development, so we have a lot more to talk about. But anything else you want to add to the history?
I will say they acquired Bungie, and this is important because of again, any console lives and dies by the games that you can play on it, right? So they acquired Bungie in 2000, and they announced Halo in June of that year. So it was being developed at that point for PCs, and so they had to then pivot it into being developed for the Xbox as well. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Little tidbit there.
June of the same year, 2001?
June of 2000. No, June of 2000.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Sorry. Right, so they had a year to kind of pivot their design into consoles.
Yeah, I remember there being history about Bungie showing off Halo, and it seemed really, really, really advanced and like crazy graphically and AI and mechanically. Like, holy cow, this is totally next gen. This is crazy. And then they had to really rein that in to make it work on the Xbox. Mm-hmm, yeah. But I don't know the details of that history. I just know that that's a thing that happened. Yeah. So that makes sense.
Cool. All right. So that's kind of the history. That's how it came to be. And so let's talk about what is this thing? Literally, what is this box? What are the components? What's the hardware that is the hardware, software, and firmware that is the Xbox?
It is a PC-based processor. It's a custom Intel Pentium 3 that runs at 733 megahertz. Its GPU is a custom NVIDIA X GPU that runs at 233 megahertz. It had 64 megabytes of RAM, and the graphics card fits between the 3 and 4, not thousands, but it was the GeForce 3 and the GeForce 4 line of cards. It fits somewhere in the middle of those.
Wikipedia says a GeForce 3 based, so I'm sure it's an advanced version of the 3, but But it was based off of the 3, so before the 4 came out. Yep. For sure.
And the important part to note is that it uses the x86 architecture. So ports from PC to this Xbox were way, way simpler than trying to code for the Emotion engine of the PS2 or the proprietary AMD-based solution that Nintendo had come up with.
Yeah.
And so, like, this game had a lot more PC ports to it, like Unreal Tournament and Doom and Counter-Strike, etc. It had a network adapter built in, which was an attachment to both the GameCube and the PS2. This is the first console that had it. Both broadband and dial-up ports were available, I believe. Actually, let me verify that real quick. I'm not 100% sure. So I know it has a broadband port because I used it when I got it. So it had a network adapter built in, which means it supported online gameplay right out of the box. It also revolutionized the memory card game space, which all the consoles had memory cards. This had a hard drive built in at 10. So some models had a 10 gig hard drive, some had an 8 gigabyte hard drive, but both of them were formatted to allow 8 gigabytes of saving space on a FATX file system. If you're familiar with PCs, you'll know what a FATX means. It had a 5400 RPM hard drive, which is not that fast, but at the time was amazing. You could save all your games on the console itself. You could make a profile. Like, all this stuff was revolutionary because the GameCube had memory cards, the PS2 had memory cards, and you would have to have like individual memory cards per person, or like games would allow you to create a profile but then save it to a memory card. And so like it was weird. The Xbox had what we know as today, like basically the roots of what we have today, where like you sign into your console, like you have a hard drive, it saves there on the console.
And that's
itself.
Again, you can tell that this, I mean, yeah, you can tell that the design of this console was really an attempt to consoleify, if you will, a PC. I remember encountering this, and I may not have made the connection at the time, but in hindsight, I'm like, yeah, that was really the first time I had encountered a lot of these things that are now commonplace in consoles that are really basically just PC things. It's like you said, signing in and all that stuff, because consoles were really, truly a different beast. They were still computers by their definition, but they were a completely different beast in how you interfaced with them until the Xbox. And now they're very similar. Yeah, even Sony and Nintendo have both kind of redesigned everything from the UI, the operating system, everything to their consoles because of the success of the Xbox in this regard.
And the Xbox console had way higher processing ability than the other consoles did, and it was supposed to be touted as like the most powerful gaming console, like it is today. That history repeats itself.
Yeah,
and so like I remember with third-party type titles, I would prefer my Xbox almost over other consoles because it supposedly run better. But the network adapter being built in allowed for Xbox Live, which revolutionized online gaming, for a console to have like a voice chat, and we'll get to the controller design too, but some console bundles came with a headset, so you could just do it right out of the box, like throw the headset into your controller and you're there. The party system, being able to join friends in a group and play a game together and join multiple games after, between games even, and the operating system allowing you to have all that Xbox Live stuff kind of built in natively when it came out. It came out later. I know Halo 2 was the top selling game for the Xbox. Came out in 2004, and that's really when Xbox Live hit the ground running.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Halo 2 and online play, I remember it was like a whole new world. It was a whole new world of gaming for me, and I both loved it and hated it because it was humbling for a young middle school-ish age kid coming on the cusp of high school to realize that he is not actually that good at games. And there are people online who are cussing him out because of how bad he is. But I remember just being blown away by the how it worked, right? Even the idea of matchmaking, the idea of popping and watching it spin, and then suddenly 25 people are available to play. It's like, whoa. I remember just being blown away, and I can hear them. I can over the voice. That's crazy. Everything we take for granted about multiplayer gaming now was just mind-boggling for a kid, for someone my age when this thing came out. It was crazy. It was incredible.
And I was a PC gamer in 2002 with at least online stuff, and my first experience with online gaming was StarCraft before then even, but we didn't have any online capabilities until 2002, which I know was late to the market. But I played games online with PC, and that required, if I wanted to play with my friends online, this was before Steam, so I didn't have a friends list. It was, what game are we playing? And we would call each other on the phone, and talk on a landline, or it would be AIM.
Gosh, yeah.
AOL Instant Messenger.
AIM, my gosh.
And we would use that to be what are we playing? Okay, we're going to jump into Diablo 2. Okay, we're going to go into Diablo 2, and you could have a friends list in that game, but it was specific to Battle.net. So I think StarCraft and Diablo had a similar friends list, but if we wanted to play Counter-Strike, we would use WAN servers, WON. It was an acronym for something. And there was no built-in friends lists or party system. So it was hey, what's your IP address? Let me join you. And we're typing each other's IP addresses into AIM. Okay, that was before Steam, right? With Xbox, it was literally come home from school, get on Xbox, and see who on your friends list is online.
Is on, yep.
And that's it. And what are we playing? Voice chat. That's it. It was all cohesive. It was there. On PC, it was, are you going to use Team Chat? Or sorry, TeamSpeak? Are you going to use Mumble?
Yeah.
Are you going to what chat are you going to use? Again, we're barely texting each other because cell phones didn't really exist. So we're calling each other on landlines or using AOL Instant Messenger to establish some sort of contact. It was so horrible on PC for online gaming. It was terrible. And even before then, people were emailing each other with this information. And so Xbox just set a whole new mentality and paradigm in place. How we interact with each other as gamers, you just log into your console and see who's online. and you immediately join a party, and you can start voice chatting, and then it's what game are we going to play, and you can join a new game together from a party. It was amazing.
Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah. Going back to the box itself for a little bit, kind of from a high level view, the thing was big. The thing was very big. The console was bigger than any console that I had seen up to that point.
The PS5 is bigger.
PS5 is bigger. Yep. That's what I mean. That's why I said up to this point. I think there are other consoles. I think even the PS3 was bigger than the original Xbox. But that was a big sticking point for a lot of the Sony loyalists, PS2 fans, even Nintendo fanboys. When this Xbox came out, kind of blew up the market. Everybody was stoked on it. A lot of the diehards on the other side of the pond, would criticize how big the console was, which is ironic then that the PS3 came out and was bigger, which again was then the other direction. You know, people in the Microsoft 360 were like, oh, you guys knocked us on how big the Xbox was, but now the PS3 is even bigger. Like, what's going on? And that kind of back and forth. The Xbox would start this sort of back and forth of just discussing the actual size of these boxes. And how unwieldy some of them would be. And there always seems to be a big one. There always seems to be a big boy every generation. I think the PS5 is the big boy for the current gen, because even though the Series X is big, it's got that like chimney look, which makes it a little bit more compact. So, there's always a big boy every generation. So, I just thought that was worth mentioning just how big these boxes, like the Xbox it was huge. So,
the last thing about hardware is that Microsoft took on heavy losses to get a foothold into the market, paying for exclusive titles and pushing a massive advertising campaigns while also selling the system at a loss because Microsoft had the money, right? Microsoft is Windows. It's Office. It's Microsoft Office. They are so much richer than Sony and Nintendo in the gaming space. They have so much more corporate money to funnel into the Xbox. They could afford to sell this thing at a loss. And if you talk about the hardware specs, it has the best graphics, the best processor, a built-in network adapter, and a built-in hard drive. It was way more advanced than anything on the market had to date, but it was competitively priced, right in there with the GameCube and the PS2.
Yep, for sure. Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about the controller. We have talked about the controller before. We had a whole episode on various controllers, but we're going to give some tender loving care and focus and attention to the Xbox controller. In the episode, we discussed the Xbox. So the original Xbox controller was called the Duke, or has been affectionately referred to as the Duke. And this thing, like the system itself, was gargantuan, biggest controller I think I've ever laid my hands on in my experience. And there's a reason. The reason it was big, was this the one that they can design? Because I'm trying to remember. Wasn't there one that was designed that was huge, or that was for the Saturn maybe, or Sega designed a controller thinking that that American hands were so much bigger.
Yep.
Yeah, either way, I don't think it was the Xbox controller was designed that way. I just remember like this controller was pretty much solely responsible for controller design these days because its follow-up, the 360 controller, would really kind of template, and they sized it down, condensed it a little bit, and all the controllers, I guess everything's now really copying Sony effectively. But anyway, so let's talk about we're talking about the Duke. Let's talk about the Duke. What is his description? What kind of inputs did it have, and in what ways was it innovative? And what other than it being big as crap, what was your opinion of the Duke at the time?
I actually don't have one, and I really, really want one. I want to put my hands around it and try it. I remember like store demos. I could use one, but I don't have one. They did revise it later. We'll talk about it in a sec. But Seamus Blackley, who we mentioned earlier, is one of the 4 engineers that made the Xbox, says on Twitter, back in 2016, which is 15 years after this console had come out, the guy in charge of the controller picked a vendor that couldn't make electronics small. So they made the design huge to fit around it.
Oh my gosh.
That's it. It's that
that's
simple, folks.
That's what outsourcing will get you.
Yep. So that's it. There's no cool theory or like deep inside knowledge as to why, or market research. No, it was just the vendor they had picked based on money was unable to make anything smaller. So that's the design they had. Like, so that's ridiculous.
Yeah. So the inputs, I believe it definitely had the triggers. It had the triggers on both ends. It had the dual joysticks, kind of like the DualShock. So one joystick on one side, one joystick on the other.
But it was offset. So the left one was up and the right one was down.
Yep. It had the AB. It followed the ABXY scheme that Nintendo did,
but it's reversed.
It is reversed obnoxiously.
Yep. And X and A are on the left, Y and B are on the right.
They had a black and white button on the Duke, and it was placed awkwardly to the right of the joystick on the right. So it's on the like right, kind of basically on the right corner of the console.
You had this array of 6 buttons.
You have to like reach your thumb down. I mean, it's already a very sizable console. And again, when I first encountered it, I was like a middle schooler, and I'm not the biggest person. I'm not one of them like super tall basketball player can fit my hand around a basketball kind of person. I am a small petite little dude, and I was a small petite little dude in middle school too. And like I would have to I remember having to just completely reach, like splay my hand out on this thing just to reach those buttons when I wanted to. Unfortunately, they weren't used for many inputs in games, but it was definitely an awkward and very uncomfortable controller from a button layout perspective. Contours, it was fine. It had fine like contours. Wouldn't really like my hand hurt because of all the stretching I had to do to reach everything, not because of the controller itself. The contours of the controller.
So the PlayStation 2 had R1 and L1 as well as R2 and L2. And so I think that was the purpose of having a white and black button, was to serve as like the R1, L1 when it comes to third-party games, so that developers could make a game for all the consoles. And the GameCube similarly had a Z button, which was like an L or an R1. And yeah, it was poorly placed. The start and back, so it wasn't select, like start and select buttons. On Xbox, it was called back. And those were placed in the middle, just like you would expect from a DualShock or a GameCube. No, GameCube did not have a select button, nor did N64, but Super Nintendo did. So there was this, that whole like middle start and select button. The D-pad was like this weird, I don't even know. So Nintendo has a patent on the D-pad, the good one. Yeah. So like, if you notice, across all of Sony's controllers and all of Xbox's controllers, they all have different D-pads than what Nintendo has, because Nintendo patented the D-pad.
Genius.
And so, I know, right? And so Xbox had their own proprietary like D-pad sort of solution that didn't have a clearly defined up, down, left, right, but it was this circle that had like humps on it. And so you had to feel your way around that. It was fine. It worked.
Right.
That's the Duke.
And I was wrong. The black and white buttons were placed in the top right hand corner, because I'm looking at the controller.
That's what I said. You said that.
I described it as the bottom right hand corner, which is where it would be on the redesigned version. The controller.
Good segue.
The controller S. Yes.
Yes. So in 2002, after poor reception of the Duke across American markets and pretty much everywhere, they redesigned the controller, and they called it the Xbox S.
The controller S, I think is what it's called. Xbox controller
weirdly
S.
named, which they continue that trend even today. They moved the start and back buttons from the middle to the far left side. So it's hard to describe unless you're looking at a picture, but you have the still offset D-pad or joysticks that we still see today on the Xbox controller, but the back and start buttons are under the left joystick. In the white
also
and black
weird.
buttons,
that's still also kind of weird.
It is so weird.
I can't.
And the white and black buttons are moved from the top right hand corner to the bottom right hand corner, which I love and commend, because if you're trying to press X, A, or B, you can sort of use the bottom of your thumb to press the white or black buttons at the same time.
Especially if you're double jointed. Yeah, I gotcha.
And so, like with Halo specifically, I remember the white or black button being a grenade.
Black was grenade and white was flashlight. So
thank you. Okay, so the black button being the grenade, you jump with A, melee was B, and then black was grenade, and you could hit all three of those buttons. You could jump, melee, and grenade at the same time with your right thumb, and it was all placed great. You could do the same thing with the original Duke controller, but it was a little bit more awkward. Like A was jump, B was melee, and grenade, like you could ride up, I guess. But anyway, I have a lot of S controllers. I have like 4 of them.
Nice.
I love them. They're great. They're ready to go anytime you want.
We do have an ongoing desire to play through the Halo games together, all the way up to the most recent, all the way up to Halo Infinite. And
I'm getting a Series X in 2 days,
I know,
so we can play it in 4K in the Master Chief Collection.
If only there weren't a raging infectious disease that was sweeping its way across the country, then
Halo and Xbox are not going anywhere. We have all the time. As long as we stay alive, we're good.
That's true. After I'm halfway through this Christmas morning. I'm not sure I'm going to be alive after this. Good Lord, this is good stuff.
I finished my Bourbon County, so I'm feeling great.
I bet you are. So the Xbox, it's a wonderful thing.
All right, there's 2 slots at the top of the controller, and you're like, why are there 2 slots? Well, Xbox had a proprietary memory card. So you could take your game saves on the go, or your profile. You could save it on the go and take it to your friend's house. And so you could plug that into the controller, just like the N64. You had your memory pack, you put it right in your controller. The other slot, why is there two? Genius. Because the headset adapter that came with your console plugs into your controller, which it kind of everyone sort of copies today.
Yep.
Like the PlayStation, you can plug into your controller. The Xbox, you can plug into your controller. But all of this was a proprietary slot and interface that was like, you plugged it into your controller. So it allows you to plug in a memory card and a headset without any interruption to your gameplay, all in the controller, which is right in front of you. I thought it was genius. I love this idea. I used it a lot back when I was playing Halo 2 with everyone.
Yeah, that's probably their biggest innovation at the time was the headset that goes right into the controller, because like people aren't sitting right next to their consoles. They're not sitting right next to the box. They're not sitting right next to even their TVs. They're usually sitting on a couch anywhere up to like 5 to 20 feet away from their TV. So having it connect right into the console was probably the best innovation that the controller brought to the table. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and like you said, still copied, still done today. So cool. Yep. All right. So moving on from the controller, let's talk about games. What were kind of the definitive games that defined the Xbox? And I'll say right out of the gate, Xbox has always been good about garnering third-party support. And you can see that in the design of the thing. Being a PC basically allowed them to, as you mentioned before, port a lot of games from the PC to the Xbox. Genius move when it comes to some market standpoint. But, you know, many of those games are more definitively thought of as PC games than the Xbox games. So what are the games that are definitive to what the Xbox was and what it brought to the table?
We have a lot of great Xbox franchises that still exist today. It's actually in a lot of criticism today because they haven't really expanded those franchises yet.
Yeah.
So Halo, of course, obviously was a launch console with Bungie. They've had the sequel on Xbox, the original, and they've continued on. So there's plenty of Halo.
Halo. You'll always hear whenever Xbox comes up, you'll always hear Penguin be like, Halo.
Right.
I love it. Even today, even though I haven't played like a Halo game since Halo 3. Really.
My house. Right.
I guess I played Halo Reach. I haven't really played a game since Reach. I've never really played 4 and haven't played 5. And
you never played Halo 4?
I haven't played 4 or 5.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to play Halo 4 with you. 5, don't worry about 5. 5 is trash. Don't worry about 5. 5 sucks. But 4 was amazing. And it was 345 Studios.
I need to freaking play
we
these
will
games.
In 4K at my house after the pandemic when we get vaccinated. It's going to be great.
I'm looking forward to it. We're just going to binge Halo. We need to binge 1 through 3 so then we can really savor 4.
If we're doing Legendary, it's not going to be a binge. It's going to be a die and stop.
We're going to binge. You aren't sleeping until Halo 3 on Legendary is complete.
It's like 48 hours
Achievement
straight.
unlocked.
So Xbox also saw kind of a prime of BioWare. Like before EA had gotten or acquired BioWare as a development studio, we saw the amazing Knights of the Old Republic, an excellent use of the Star Wars license, one of the best, most beloved games ever, especially from BioWare. RPG, party-based system, storytelling, dialogue choices, the whole 9 yards, just amazing. And then they continued in their awesomeness with Jade Empire, which was also an Xbox exclusive, but not really a franchise. But I just want to highlight BioWare being amazing on the original Xbox. Yeah. We saw the introduction of Forza, which was the first racing simulation game. So Project Gotham Racing was also a racing game on the Xbox, but that was more of an arcade type. That was a competition to Ridge Racer with Sony. But Forza was the competition to Gran Turismo. So they really tried to hit Sony at every level. It was like, okay, we're going to have the best first-person shooter, we're going to have the best racing simulator, and we're going to have the best arcade racing game. And those are all exclusive to the original Xbox. And then we had Fable, which was an incredible third-person action RPG, unlike anything we had ever seen before, with
set
a morality
the world
system.
On fire with the morale. I was going to say they really started the morality system. So, yep.
I absolutely adored the original Fable. Played the crap out of it.
So good.
Yes, absolutely amazing. So a lot of those franchises kind of branched out, and of course later they acquired Rare and went on with the Xbox 360. But in the early stages, they actually remade Conker's Bad Fur Day on the Xbox, which I thought was interesting. I have a copy of that. It's kind of hard to find. It's kind of rare. Pun intended, because Rareware made it. But they were also the amazing third-party system to publish things on. So all the Rainbow Six stuff, the Splinter Cell series was like renowned on Xbox. Prince of Persia, those are all Ubisoft titles. And then we can go into like Counter-Strike and Unreal Tournament and Doom and like Chronicles of Riddick. Like those are other games. The Activision was publishing all the Tony Hawk games on Xbox and Spider-Man games on Xbox, and they performed better and looked better and had better draw distance and frame rates and all the things you would expect. So like the Xbox was awesome.
Yeah,
it was a fantastic.
Did you mention KOTOR from BioWare? Okay, you did.
Knights of the Old Republic. Yep.
I was gonna say just that. I mean, that game is that game really is BioWare's one of their coup de grace, and just again a big Star Wars RPG that people as beloved. It is it was originally an Xbox exclusive. And was Dead or Alive? Dead or Alive was exclusive.
Dead or Alive is a fighting game.
Yep. Dead or Alive is
the Tekken rival. Mm-hmm. Like they really did analyze what Sega and Sony were doing, Virtual Fighter and Tekken, and said, "Nope, we have Dead or Alive, and we're going to do something cool, and destructible environments, and customizable characters,
and jiggle physics." We'll put it that.
There's that too.
Listen, important for selling consoles to young men in America who are pre-teens, pre-adolescents,
American preteens.
So they would of course also elaborate on that even further with Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball, which was another fascinating moment in gaming history that was exclusive to the Xbox. So cool. Then we'll move on from games, go back to the box a little bit, talk about attachments and innovative accessories. Anything else? Anything that was not necessarily the box itself that was kind of innovative or even just there?
The headset is pretty like, the box itself had the network adapter and the hard drive, but like the headset, the memory cards, like it all just worked. It was so cohesive. It was so non-buggy, and it all just worked and flowed together. There's not really much else to talk about in line of accessories. I think they had a keyboard you could type. That wasn't really like super used until the 360 time. So I can't really think of any other accessories or attachments because it all was all built in. Like
yep. I was gonna say
the GameCube required a modem, and the PS2 required a hard drive network adapter attachments.
Yep. And we wouldn't really get things like cameras until more recent generations and streaming become a thing. So like there's all kinds of accessories nowadays that you can tack onto your console. But at the time, Xbox was really narrowing it all in and trying to make the box as much of an out of the box experience as possible with as many things as you would need just built in, and then everything else, was not a big deal. So cool.
Right.
All right. Well, let's then finish up and talk about what was the impact and the legacy. We've talked some about it already, but what would you say is the legacy of the original Xbox?
I think the reason we have the PS4 and the Xbox One existing on the x86 architecture is because Xbox started it. Sony had the Emotion engine on PS2 and had a Cell processor on PS3, and then adopted the just go PC. It just makes sense. It's easier for everyone involved. It saves money. Developers can put games across all things, and it started in 2001 with the original Xbox. It was the blending of console and PC games because it blended that barrier, despite the fact that PC games were light years ahead of what Xbox could do at the time. Each generation since then has narrowed that gap down to the point where now the PS5 is literally better than my gaming PC, which costs like $500 worth of stuff 5 years ago. And now the PS5 costs $500 now, and it's way better. So to upgrade my current PC to even match the specs of an Xbox Series S, which is the 1440p like budget console, would cost me more than the console itself. So like the Xbox original started that. That's its impact. It was like, let's narrow this gap. Let's let developers publish games across PC and console and allow a budget-friendly box that just works, that doesn't have an operating system, it doesn't need driver updates, it doesn't need all this complicated building PC parts and things. Like, let's just let someone buy a box. And it set the market on fire. And I think it pushed consoles to a relevancy today that would have died. There was a giant wave of conversations back in the PS3 and Xbox 360 era that basically said consoles are dead. Like PC's taken over, it's cheaper, it's better, it's more powerful, there's Steam, it's doing its thing, and like consoles are dead. Well, they have proven them all wrong.
PCs are dead. Or wait,
they said consoles are dead.
Consoles are dead. Yeah.
They actually said consoles were dead, and everyone has suspected that. Like all the business analysts, Game Industry Up is, John Pachter, whatever his name is, They all like claimed consoles were going to die and the console market was fading and everything's going digital and PCs are taking over. They're not. Obviously, there were now 2 generations later from that, PS4 being the best selling console of the last generation. And PS5 slated to be the best. They've outsold the Xbox Series consoles 2-1, so to speak. That all happened because the original Xbox existed. Yeah. Sony answered that and is beating them hand over fist. But here we are, like we're in the 9th generation of consoles and they still exist. They're still relevant. They still happen and they're closer to PC specs than we've ever seen before. And that is because of the existence of the original Xbox in 2001.
Yep, I agree. I mean, and just again, Microsoft breaking in was so good for the consoles, for gaming, for the industry, because, you know, a lot of the things you've touched on too, but we'll see with the 360 up until this point, the PlayStation had dominated. Sony was dominating. Sony entered the game. They blasted Sega out of the water, basically, with their PlayStation. Mm-hmm. They continued to dominate, even starting to take from Nintendo's lunch, and they were just having their heyday for like 2 whole console generations. And then Xbox, the Xbox would break in, and you know they weren't shaking in their boots. The PlayStation 2, like you said, was the best selling console of all time, but because of decisions, we'll talk about it with the next one of these we do, but because of decisions that were made, just to give you a taste, because the decisions that were made with the PlayStation 3 and better decisions that were made with the Xbox 360, for the first time in a long time, the Xbox 360 would dominate the market and would really give Sony a run for their money. So the first console to really like, and competitiveness is good, you know, no matter what you feel about Microsoft, no matter what you feel about Sony, Nintendo, any of these guys, competition is incredible for capitalism because what you see is innovation. They're always innovating, trying to top the other guy. And so again, like you said, we all have the original Xbox to thank for this, and Microsoft's success breaking into a very crowded market at the time. They could not have predicted the downfall of Sega. So they took a calculated risk, and it paid off, I think, for them.
It did. So, don't forget, of the top 5 best-selling consoles of all time, 4 of them are Sony consoles, and that is the PlayStation 1, 2, 3, and 4. The Xbox 360 is in 6th place. The Nintendo only is in the top 5 with the original Wii from 2006. So those are the top 5. I mean, and Sony is still destroying. I mean, Sony and the PlayStation are wrecking. Nintendo is destroying in the handheld market. They exist on the Game Boy, the DS, and the 3DS, and the Switch. The Nintendo Switch
is doing awesome.
Give it setting time. Records.
Yeah, I was going to say, give it time. The Switch is, I mean,
the Switch will break into that top 5.
2020 was an incredible year for the Switch.
Yep.
And it will continue Nintendo's doing just fine.
But the whole industry, the reason why there even is a top selling consoles of all time is because of the existence of the Xbox. It pushed the death of consoles as we might see it, if and when it ever happens. It pushed it out farther because people saw the relevancy of what PC architectures could do and how development studios can put all their games across all the platforms very easy with a couple pushes of a button. It just kind of streamlined and mainstreamed everything. But Sony reacted to Microsoft. That's the biggest thing. Like Microsoft went PC and Sony was like, we're also going to do this. We're going to do this. Starting with the PS4. And that was the trend. The other major impact and legacy of what Xbox brought to the industry is the possibilities and the opportunities for independent development studios, indie games, to kind of burst into the market. At the very end of the original Xbox's life cycle, there was this Xbox Live Arcade initiative where Microsoft partnered with low-budget studios or like smaller studios and funded them to make really cool games. And they published them on their Xbox Live Arcade. And that blew up in the Xbox 360 era with games like Braid and Limbo, Super Meat Boy, and there's a million other games. All of the independent games came out, and the Xbox 360 is really when that happened, but its roots and its legacy were established here on the original Xbox. Those Xbox Live Arcade games were actually pushed onto discs. If you remember the Xbox Live Arcade discs you could buy, that had a collection of games, stuff like Uno and Monopoly and like those things, but also the independent games. That all happened and started back in 2001. And now today, you can go on the PSN, the PlayStation Network store, or you can go on the Xbox Live store, and you can purchase a myriad of independent games. EA has their whole like EA Play. I don't know what the name of what specifically is the independent stuff, but we have A Way Out, and it's the next game from that studio is, I don't remember, but yeah. So independent games are going crazy right now. Stuff like Undertale and Stardew Valley, all that stuff. It's all blowing up because of the original Xbox, because of what it did, and allowed independent developers to have a platform and a place to play, and allowed people to download stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, the last piece of impact I would say is notable. We already touched on it, so I won't talk too much about it, but the console being built in with a network adapter created a fervor for online gaming and an accessibility for online gaming that did not exist prior to 2001, and didn't really truly exist until Halo 2 came out, whenever that did, so early 2000s.
2004.
But yeah, so 2004. Yeah. So 2004 would really be, I mean, again, 2004 is notable for another reason. It's when World of Warcraft came out. So between that and Xbox, like, really opened up the world. I think opened up the world's eyes to what online gaming could be in general. So definitely is part of the impact of the Xbox console. So that is all the time we have for the day.
There's one more. There's one more.
You get a sentence.
We have a segment of our show called DLC that literally started on the original Xbox. The idea of DLC started with the original Xbox.
Map packs.
Yes.
Yep.
It was map pack. Fable had DLC. It was content added to games. It
After
happened.
release. Yep. For better, for worse, for sure. Yep. Cool.
Exactly. That's it. There's my one sentence.
There you go. All right, that's the show. So, what are your thoughts on the original Xbox? Did you love the console? Did you hate the console? Are you a Microsoft apologist, or are you a Sony fanboy and hate the Xbox and everything that it stands for? We want to hear those thoughts and more. And Termite will tell you, summarize where you can find us and other ways you can engage with us.
Just go to 80bitpodsmash.com. That's our landing website with all of our socials, all of our podcast platforms. But don't forget our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/80bitpodsmash, where we have a 80-bit newscast running through the weekly news every single week at 8 p.m. Eastern on Mondays. Every single Monday, we'll have an 80-bit newscast at twitch.tv/80bitpodsmash, followed up by our Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, gameplay live streams. Penguin and Termite alternate between the two. Sometimes we collab and we do some co-op stuff, but every Wednesday at 8 p.m. also at twitch.tv. You can join us in chat, interact with our community, ask us questions. There's a Discord server. There's links to those in our show notes, as well as at 80bitpodsmash.com. So check us out. Like and subscribe everywhere. Leave us reviews.
Subscribe, like and subscribe. We will see you next week with a new episode that we have not concluded what the topic will be, but it will be great and it will be awesome. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.